if you do have the parallel YouTube open. Hey everybody, this is John Spalding with Coffee with Jeremy from SG Media Group. This is our third installment. We have some very special guests today, and I'm going to have Jeremy do our kickoff and introduce our group today. Open. Hey everybody, this is John Spalding with Coffee.
And so, Steve, make sure you turn off the YouTube piece because it creates feedback for us. So, good afternoon to some of you who are on the East Coast. Good morning to some of you who are on the West Coast and joining from all around the world. We're really excited to be here this week with Coffee with Jeremy. Today's topic is around process consulting versus expert consulting. And as you know, we choose a topic for each of these once a week. They do happen on Wednesday afternoon / early morning / morning for our Pacific Coast group. Process consulting versus expert consulting, I always feel, is a really interesting topic for S&G Endeavors as we look at the work we're doing. Because we really are process experts. And as it says in the description, an expert consultant can help you know what you can do better with your organization and can give you the advice that you may need or that participants may need in order to create a stronger strategy. A process consultant or an expert in the process can help you better understand how to have the conversations you need to have, better understand the process you're using to create the change you're seeking, and can really help you engage people into that process in an effective, meaningful, and efficient way. And so I always think it's good to kind of dive in and see what we can do. We're joined by two guests today. I'm really just absolutely thrilled that both of you can be here with us today. And so I want to introduce our viewers to Renee Rivera from Bike East Bay. Renee is the executive director for Bike East Bay and is one of, I like to call, our all-star clients who really has taken the value of collaborative planning and meaningful engagement of her advocates and leaders and even the public in their organization. Renee, you just have a valuable perspective for me on the value of process consulting, and so really glad you're here with us today. So welcome, Renee.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Excellent. And then we're also joined by Dr. Steve Cady. For those of you who may have gotten as far as reading the descriptions, you'll see that Steve really was key in exposing me to collaborative change and the power of using a process that would engage everyone in the room, in the discussion, and make sure that we had actionable things coming out of that, and more importantly, a more structured change process to help organizations succeed. And Steve, I don't know that I ever actually told you that before, so I wanted to recognize that you really did play an influence there. And Steve also teaches at Bowling Green State University, does a lot of consulting as well with a variety of organizations like Daimler Chrysler and others that I'm probably not remembering at this time, and is also a partner with John and I on Nexus for Change, which is an organization dedicated to bringing change, collaborative change agents, practitioners, and scholars together to learn from each other. And so, again, Steven, great to have you here as well, Steve. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
I thought, oh, you know what? I think I forgot to say thank you to you, John, for hosting us at SG Media Group, and we appreciate what SG Media Group does with helping bring organizations together on a more virtual level, and so we appreciate you hosting us today. I thought we'd begin our discussion just by kind of going around and I think what I'd like to do, actually, Renee, is maybe start with your advocacy summit that you held about a week and a half ago. And one of the videos that we're still trying to clean up on the S&G Endeavor side was an interview that I did with one of your participants who was talking about, and I know you've seen that, but he was talking about how the process for him and the fact that there was someone in charge of the process really made a difference for him as a participant in the summit and really made him feel confident that we were coming up with things that were going to be able to be acted on by a lot of people instead of just a few. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe talk about what you guys did with the Advocacy Summit and how process consulting may have played a role in that for you.
Yeah, just to say briefly about who we are and what we do, Bike Use Bay is a bicycle advocacy organization based in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, representing the east side of the Bay. And we've been around for many years. I've been there for about 5 years and have been really focused on building the capacity of the organization, both by building up the staff of professional advocates, but also really building a network of what we call local leaders throughout our territory. We represent 35 and more cities and towns, 2 counties. We have a really large area, and we really rely upon volunteers and people who live in the cities and towns all over our area to be the leaders for change in their city and to work with their city to make their streets more, a safer, more welcoming place to bike and walk. So the summit that Jeremy just referred to that we did a week and a half ago was with about 50 of our local leaders. We brought them together to really focus on both what are we trying to accomplish together, but also on how are we going to do it, how are we going to collaborate, how do we work as a regional organization and as many groups of local volunteer-led advocacy groups. So the process piece is really important because we're not there to tell all of these local leaders how to do it or to say this is the strategy, troops, let's roll it out. We're really there to learn from all of those leaders and to find a way that we all align around strategy and can therefore move forward with more energy and enthusiasm because of that alignment.
I absolutely, and I think it was really interesting to kind of watch how, going into it, there were some topics that we had put on the table as, these might be things that come up, these might be things we want to talk about, and it may not have been the same wording, but it was very close to those areas that we've been able to identify. And what we help Renee do is, and Steve, I'm sure this might open up some thoughts from your side, but we really helped Renee figure out how to blend a telling our stories activity where participants really got to reflect on what had been working well and what they needed to get out of collaboratively working together, and then really built on that with kind of an open space design model where we really opened the conversation and they were able to take it in the direction that they needed to take it. Renee, do you feel like even though we opened it up to everybody, that we still ended up with clear action plans and priorities for you to be able to take forward, even though it started with that open slate? I know that's always one of the concerns of our clients.
Right. No, it absolutely, the right things absolutely emerged in the open space as we've kind of come to know that they will, because we've done this a few times now. We're getting pretty good at it. All of the topics that we needed to talk about and needed to do action planning around emerged in the open space organically, and we ended up with 27 recommendations from the group that we're now, deduping and organizing into a capacity building plan that will really guide how we work with our local leaders over the next 2 years.
And of course, we did finish the day with the prioritization to help Renee and her staff out with that so that they didn't have to process the priorities of the group as well. Steve, I know you do a lot of work in this. Is there maybe a similar venture kind of close to what Renee's describing that you almost want to highlight how you felt you being able to provide that process consulting like S&G Endeavors does was really helpful to your clients?
Yeah, I have a question just to get me a little bit more focused. I got a couple examples. What was a big challenge with Renee? What was maybe as you've been doing this, what's the one thing you're still trying to figure out?
The biggest thing we're trying to figure out is how to pay for it all. We've got a million good ideas and not nearly enough funding. So if you could solve that one for me, I would be so grateful.
So to pay for all the ideas that came out of the event.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you an example from the Area Office on Aging, in which they had a levy passed, and they had a certain amount. They had, they had to figure out how they would appropriate those monies for all the various service providers for in the aging population, all the different, like the senior centers to eye care to Meals on Wheels to just a whole host of different services for the older adult population in Northwest Ohio. Mm-hmm. And so what they did was what we did is, and we actually had a group of students, and it could have been, this was a while ago, John or Jeremy may have been a part of this. But essentially what we did is we brought all those different service providers who were going to benefit from, or who were going to get that money. So similarly, you might be thinking about who are all the people that are going to either benefit from these ideas or who are going to have to enact these ideas and who care to enact the ideas. So a certain limited number of resources can be given to all these great ideas. Well, the great ideas only happen because people care about them. Mm-hmm. So similarly, you got the senior center, that's a great idea. You got the eye care, that's a great idea. You got this Meals on Wheels, that's a great idea. And only a certain amount of money can go out to all of them to help them do their services. So what they did is we held a one-day summit on identifying the criteria for appropriating the funds. And the group came and spent a day really. One is connecting. It had been the first time they'd all been in the room together, and why they were motivated to get there was because they all wanted the funds, right? So we got them in the room because they cared about how they were going to get the funds. Then they were engaged in hearing and going through a whole process of learning, getting up to date, connecting what they were hearing from constituents and this and that, and then it rolled into talking about the limited funds and the choices that have to be made. And then they talked about criteria, and really came to kind of provided guidance on how best to select where the money goes to which ideas.
Steve, I love what you're talking about there, and it sounds it wasn't overfunding, but we actually kind of used a similar approach when we were doing work with Nebraska Department of Public Health last year. One of the community health departments needed to determine which one of their local communities would be able to get a pass-through grant. And they kind of did that same thing where they presented about the grant, the opportunities. They got them really interested in what that grant would mean for them, and then had the group develop the criteria that the health department should use to select the grant, and even had the group as a whole start identifying who might be the best community based on those criteria. Now, we saw it got a little touchy toward the end when the group and the group as a whole actually decided that they wanted the health department to do the evaluating the criteria pieces because they felt like they were being put in a position where they had to argue for the fact that it should go to them as opposed to what was better based on the criteria.
Yeah,
but it does sound very similar.
yeah. So I think that that's so. Renee, when you think about that, does it add anything to your knowledge or ideas on how you might address it as you go, or is there a question that comes to mind as you listen, as you think about that example?
Hmm.
In short, did that help?
Well, we still have a lot of, what has helped through the process that we did with Jeremy is that we've got, the shape of a really good proposal that we can take out to a number of prospective funders, to try and raise money that we need to do the capacity building piece. For instance, a lot of what came out of the group was need for training of the local leaders on advocacy, on fundraising, on other areas. The need for better online tools for collaboration, which also speaks to kind of the staff support that happens on our side. So we came out with a whole bunch of super concrete things. It's practically like a proposal's already written out of the recommendations that came out, the prioritized recommendations that came out of the summit. But we still have to get out there with the help of all of these local leaders who are all very motivated to find those businesses and foundations and individuals in the community who want to support.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah. Did you have you gathered together the various people in the community that are experts at fundraising and grant writing? Have you done any collaborative engagement with them that might care about what you're doing?
That's a good idea. Yeah, to bring together some of the folks who work in fundraising, who represent some of the foundations that fund us now, for some kind of conversation.
Yeah, we did.
Maybe that would be a smaller conversation.
Yeah, we did.
I know one of the things that Renee did when they did their strategic planning summit last year, as well, Steve, was actually engage some of those funders in the process itself. And in that summit, because this was a follow-up to a strategic planning summit that Renee and her organization did last year as well. So let me, because I know we really do try to keep these brief and we want to be respectful of your time. We've got about 12 minutes left in our time here, and I don't know how your guys' coffee cups are looking, but mine's looking a little empty. So we're going to have to go fill that here in about 10 or so minutes. But what, let me ask you this. Steve, as you think about the work that you've done, and Renee, as you think about the work that you've done, let's give an example for people, and I'll actually kick it off, but I want to give an example of where an expert consultant can be helpful, and where then we've obviously talked a little bit about process, but just kind of give some ideas for people on when they might want to look for a process consultant. So my expert consultant would be, for example, at your summit, Renee, and one of the things that I've done with some of the other summits that we've conducted is really looked at, are there 2 or 3 experts, or in your case, Renee, you guys based it on an organization that you highlighted, that has expertise in an area. My clients really need to get that expertise in their head so that when they're looking at their strategy, they can really see, you know what, if we do X, Y, and Z, this will help expand our footprint in cycling, for example. Or in your case, well, I'll let you talk about that if you want to, but kind of thinking about when do we need that expert in the room that can help us really think about the strategies that we have. I think that's an area where I even tend to tap into some expert consultants. For example, on the Nebraska Department of Public Health, there's a couple expert consultants that we work with that specifically know about developing walking infrastructure that's going to increase, that's going to help people be able to walk in communities. And so when we need some expertise in that area, we'll engage them. From a process perspective, I always tell people, if you're trying to figure out how to resolve the issue and you're not sure exactly who needs to be in that conversation, or maybe you're not sure exactly what that conversation should look like, those are key questions where, as a process consultant, I feel like we can help you. Renee, are there